Hey, everybody. Oh, Jesus, man, this is a nice mic today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Carside Chat. I am your host, Primo. And once again, we're going to have Joel Chappelle back on. Web.
Chapel, you got to get a good
Oh,
name.
man, I do that every damn time. It's
Hate trying to
killing
make
me.
French.
I'm from the South. It is what it is. You know, it's funny because I'm from the South, and you would think with the chapel that it would be more appropriate for me because I'm from the South, you know, like more what is it, Bible Belt, if you will.
Yeah, there you go.
But
yeah.
it's, I don't know, you're gonna have to just deal with it. But anyway,
Swirly Baptist in you.
You know what, I got an idea. It's NES, it's at NEAS web guy, and that's your, what is it now? That's IG,
so that's,
right?
That's Twitter, and then IG is at Web NEAS. So it's the New England Auto Shows.
So WEBNEAS.
Yeah.
Perfect. I got it. I think I get it this time. But yeah, you guys got to visit Joel Chapel over there. If you were in the New England area and you love car shows of any kind, there is nothing I don't think that I don't think there is a show that you don't have already on your list, right?
I think I have like over 650 that we're trying to keep track of.
Wow.
At least plus kind of thing. That some of them are a little some of them are a little dated. You know, I have a master list that has like that has that all 650 kind of thing, but then it also the calendar is really kind of what the big aspect of it, so that like you go in for the day and it'll give you the next 3 days on the website.
So here's my thing. Have you ever thought about going like global with this thing?
I have enough trouble keeping track with the 650 of doing it by myself. You know, like I actually have on my FAQ page, it actually says like, you know, who is New England Auto Shows, and it literally goes photographer Joel Chapel, writer Joel Chapel. Like, you know, basically, like, you know, it does, like I do everything. There is nobody else for NewEnglandAutoShows.com.
Right.
So I do every once in a while kind of like think about going like like a little bit further out, maybe like expanding the New England area. Sometimes I do list a couple of the New York and New Jersey areas. Kind of thing, but other than that, it's like to go any further than that, like Pennsylvania would be kind of a stretch kind of thing. And I have enough problems kind of even visiting like the Connecticut shows and and the Rhode Island shows kind of thing. So
right,
you know, that's a goal, is like 1 year I'm gonna finally hit each state for New England in one season.
Yeah. Well, hey, have you thought about an app?
So apps are great, and I would love to someday graduate to the application for the website. My issue is like you gotta hire a programmer, and you gotta hire a software guy that's going to maintain it for you.
Yeah, right,
right. And software guys, being a guy who used to work in IT, you know, I can be pretty dangerous, but actually getting a software guy to like maintain your application is not cheap. It's you know, everybody kind of thinks it's really easy to do, and you know, it just happens, and you can spend like 15 to 20 grand to get an app started, but that doesn't, you have to keep updating it. It has to be, you know, because there's always going to be security issues with it and all that kind of stuff. So
that's kind of what I'm running into right now. So we're starting to build the website. We're actually getting something that's executiveautomotivesociety.com. So we used to be aggressivedesign.net. Everybody was like that. We're a big network thing, but that's the thing is it was never meant to be what it kind of became. It became its own thing. And it ended up being something where it's like, oh, you run shows out of this and stuff. And I'm like, no, that was never the intention. It was supposed to be media. It was supposed to be able to put people together. In other words, people like yourself, and say, hey, you need car shows. You go over to, you know, New England. You go to WebNES, and then you need a upholstery, you need this, you need a guy that turn wrenches, you know, that kind of stuff. And the other thing is I guess in some sides of it, it kind of lost support. So it didn't work in some areas, and then other areas it did really well. But yeah, the goal was always to have kind of this show mindset and kind of take it to the next level of doing what we're doing right now. And that's the thing is at the time I was writing for HIN City and all that, but that turned into what it is today. So we said, we should just go full information and use oriented the way we're doing it. I want to do this big Range Rover launch. It's happening, I think, on the 26th. So I want to do some kind of stream thing with that.
They launched
But
Discovery.
Yeah. But yeah, so we put this in, and that's the thing is we get all the stuff, and these new websites are all run basically on a WordPress thing, and all those WordPresses are all apps. So
yeah.
It's a constant process of saying I have to update the website, and then I have to update the apps associated with the website, and then then you get into SSL formats and stuff like that. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna.
Yeah, so I mean that's the trick. Like New EnglandAutoshows.com is actually based on WordPress.
Yeah.
Which it's, to me it was just like the means to an end, and it was easy, and it also kind of like automatically formatted, so you could open up on a phone and still see what you needed to see, kind of thing. I still prefer the web version of it personally, but I know a lot of my followers, they actually stay on phones and that kind of thing. So
yeah,
so you have to cater to that, and that's why I chose web or WordPress to do that. So
that was the crazy thing about it. They were showing me the so we took the website and then we started to shrink it, and as we shrunk it, it started to move and flex based on the size of it. So it's like if you were on a iPad, if you were on an iPhone, if you were on even your tablets and stuff like that, it didn't matter what it was, whatever it was very dynamic, and it was very exciting to see that. So I'm kind of really excited. It's just something. It was a project that was started in January, and it went through two people, and then we finally got to somebody who I want to say is I hate to say it like this because the people before professionals too, just a different kind of professional. But I got somebody that's really, I'm going to say, very media savvy. You get into these guys, and the word professional jumps right to mind. And we got somebody on it, and it's been probably about a 2-month process right now. And we're really, really close. I'm trying to figure out exactly how I can screw it up because that's kind of my vibe. But I'm sure we'll get it, and once it gets going, it'll be up to speed and doing great. And then we can kind of drop off with some of the stuff that's kind of dead weight and get into this kind of blogging and all this other stuff that really I think is where we kind of excel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that, that's the thing. I keep kind of going back and forth about doing like a total web redesign, like in the off season kind of thing, and then the real job takes
right, exactly.
Gets in the way, kind of thing, and that in that aspect. But someday it'll happen, I think. But and like I said, someday we'll get to that. Maybe we'll get to an app. But I gotta like increase the followings and get the readership to stay with, kind of thing, in order to support that.
I think that's the thing is it's always going to be the same monster regardless. It's always going to be, and I hate to say it like this, you never have enough followers.
You never do. No,
right.
and that's absolutely true. And it's the same thing. Like you already know this, like 100%. Especially with dealing with YouTube, dealing with Instagram. And that's the thing. It's like it took me a long time to embrace Instagram. Like I was kind of like really only doing like Facebook, and really like Twitter I don't do as much as I probably should do for like the promotion of the website, kind of thing. So and I got Instagram, and then I just kind of forgot about it for like 2 years and really didn't do anything with it. And then this year it kind of I started to really try to make a concerted effort of trying to like update Instagram, and I can't believe how much that has led to much more traffic on the website. I didn't think it would. I didn't think it would make that big of a difference. I literally kind of thought, well, it's just a different audience. That's what I kind of pictured it as, like, or it's an expanded audience, kind of thing. But
well, that's my thing was just especially with the kind of stuff when it comes to luxury exotics and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking more and more with the muscle car scene, which is kind of our, if you will, our bread and butter.
Yeah.
That was so Instagram heavy, and I was kind of amazed that it was very adopted by a lot of people. That, you know, a lot of guys will build these big cars, and Instagram was the way that they kind of fed out. The thing that I'm hearing now, which I don't think I'll be a big fan of, I don't think I'll jump into it, is TikTok. That's just, I don't think that's ever going to be me. And I just saw
Yeah.
the age group up to 24, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that our viewers are not in that bracket. So,
Well, I mean, uh, you know, the last time we spoke, we kind of spoke about the different genres of cars. I think you would probably be surprised that for TikTok, like a lot of the young, you know, what I call the young bloods, are probably doing the TikTok thing, but I don't know that they're doing it specifically looking for car information or car shows per se, kind of thing. I think they're still going to YouTube for that. They're still going to not so much Facebook, but I think if anything, Instagram, they're definitely hitting for that.
Yeah,
I mean,
Instagram.
I think the average person or the average, I think the average demographic of like 24 to, or actually, let's go back down to like even 18 to 30, I would say.
Yeah.
They're multi-genre or multi-platform. They're not just on like Facebook and that's it. You know, they're hitting like all the platforms, and their phone has every update from each one of those.
Yeah. Well, I think this was the thing that I said. I said this back in the late 90s, because I was not so much doing I wasn't touching the radio stuff, and I wasn't doing any of the podcasting stuff, but we did have blogs where we wrote. We did the stuff that I did from the blog side with Aggressive Design, ended up being what we brought over to HIN City.
You used to make me so upset with some of your blogs, because I would literally be like, I think I'm gonna write a thing. Yeah. And I had it like kind of framed out in my head, and then I'd go to your website and go, damn it, I swear to God, he has that Ray thing like stealing my thoughts like right out of my freaking head.
I'm glad it's not just you though, because it happens to me all the time. Like I'll think of an idea and we'll bring it up to somebody, and like, because this isn't the only business I do. Obviously, I have a lot of other businesses that I have my hands in, and we'll think of a product and I'll put it out, and then all of a sudden it's like 2 minutes later, it's all over the internet. Somebody's made it successful or big or something. And it's like, it gets frustrating, but I think of it like this. I'm like, there's always a different perspective to whatever you do. Yeah. So if I write something about cheese, you'll write about cheddar, and, you know, it always has a different kind. It's that article that I wrote about winning a car show, which I love, probably to this day is probably my most, probably millions of views at this point. But that one right there was the one that somebody said, well, nobody can rewrite that. And I said, yeah, you'd be amazed. Like, because each show has different, because if you do a tuner show, you're probably thinking about being clean, but you're probably thinking about throwing a ton of mods at the car.
Yeah.
While something where it's a concourse, it's a totally different monster. Like, you want to be by your car, a lot of that fame and stuff. It's the word clout we use a lot, especially when we talk about Instagram. It means so many different things to so many different people. You know what I mean?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it really does, because I think, you know, I think where that's demonstrated a lot, which I saw at the Meet New England show today, the Boston Lowriders were there.
Yeah.
And man, I'll tell you, first of all, let's talk about a club that has like great representation.
Oh, boy. Mm-hmm.
Right. And some absolutely stunningly prepared cars.
Yep.
But you know, and they're all, you know, each one of them, they have like their Instagram on it, you know, to follow where they're going, with, you know, what they're doing, kind of thing. And they're they seem to be, at least to me, they seem to be very organized in what they do and how they do.
Oh, they do. They're like just like a motorcycle group, or
I think, yeah, you know what? That's actually, I think that's actually a very good analogy to literally compare it to, because they
Well, they brought that comparison to me, like and not just
Did they
with their
really?
group, but the whole, because they're not just one group; they're 5 or 6 guys. Like, so you know what? I'm going to pull it up right now. I got it on my phone here. Coming up very soon, and I always tell Mark, because I think I'm the primary guy that covers this event, but Viva East, which will be what is it? It's the last one for next year. I think it's July 7th, 8th, and 9th. There'll be a link posted. So Viva East. So yeah, this whole thing right here is they're going to have this big event, Viva East. So if you get a chance to look it up,
Yeah.
yeah, Viva East is one of the big shows out there, and
I have
they're all there.
It was actually on the calendar.
Nice.
For
we should go. Let's do it.
Right, we should go. That is one definitely to go to. The first time I truly encountered the awesomeness that is Boston Lowriders is I've seen them at different shows, but I didn't really put together like how put together that they were until I saw them at World of Wheels.
Yeah.
You know, and you know they brought some they brought that pink BMW and that is just like, I mean, fantastic. And then that like 80s yellow Toyota station wagon that even has like a matching a remote control car to go with it, kind of thing. And it's just like, it's so like their work is just done so well. And like I said, there was actually 2 BMWs. There was a red one, and then there was the pink one, and just like the fit and finish on each one of those. And then there's another guy who I think is one of the main guys, and he's got that orange Honda Accord. That is just, every time I see that thing, it just blows my mind how, like, especially the interior. The interior is just
how long have they been around? They've been around for a really long time.
They really have. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I you know, I've only like run into them like maybe like a couple times. They don't really come up to New Hampshire that much. They're really more into the Mass scene, and I think they do kind of like the Rhode Island scene as well, kind of thing.
I haven't seen them much with the Rhode Island stuff.
Really?
I've seen them. We did an exotic wrap party for somebody's McLaren, which was probably one of the coolest wraps I've ever seen on a car.
Yeah.
Well, in person, that is. I've seen some crazy ones, but like here it is getting done and everything. But yeah, they went to that, and so we had literally everything from Ferraris, and we had a really nice, I think, R32 Skyline, Supras. I mean, you literally could name every kind of car that was there. And they rolled up, and it was really cool. Like,
I think for today's show they had close to 30 members representing it, maybe more.
Wow, that's the most I've ever heard in one spot for them.
Yeah, and they had like an entire aisle, both sides, you know, kind of thing, and each car was, you know, I mean, there was a couple that are like, you know, half done projects kind of thing, but they're like, but you could see the potential of what's coming along, kind of thing.
But that's Meet New England's event is now concluded for the year at that last event.
Yeah, so today was their trunk or treat event, which was their final event. A little interesting tidbit for me is that they did have their model talent search ladies that finaled and competed for the whole year, and I'm not 100% sure. I'm guessing what they did is that they had each of them probably choose like their favorite photo, and then they had a bunch of them printed, and you could go and get one signed for, you know, you threw a little bit of money at them and they would sign it for you, kind of thing. And nice. So I had to do it because one of them was my actual photo that I took that I actually gave to them. And it wasn't
really voting for the model, it was voting for your own picture,
right? And it was my car, and Kiki was sitting on the hood of it, and then another one was my other car, which is a Jeep. She was sitting in, or different girl sitting in front of that one. So I was like, okay.
I think I remember that picture, but I didn't know that was your Jeep.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's my winter and my new semi project kind of thing. That I acquired. I actually acquired it in February. It's an 06 TJ.
Well,
Uh,
any of those Jeep guys are going to tell you that any kind of Jeep is a project.
oh yeah, and well, and what's funny on the picture, I actually named it Winston, and it's after Winston the ogre from Time Bandits.
Yeah.
So in Time Bandit font, I actually have the name Winston on the hood.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
what's really funny is that there's a woman who actually has a Jeep JK that's done in the Skittles, and I think I've told you about this before.
Hmm.
And as it turns out, she's a massive uh, um, Time Bandit fan, and to the point that like on her arm, she actually has tattooed the Ultimate Evil and the Supreme Being on both sides of her arm.
That's
Kind
funny.
of thing. And she was at Meet New England tonight, and I walked by, and I just walked by and just said, "Return the map," and she just started laughing, and
Nice.
kind of thing. But it was a good turnout. It was a really good turnout. A lot of cars. They filled up both lots. The line to get in, it literally took me 30 minutes to actually get into the event.
So you heard what happened at the Mass Cruisers meet, right?
I did not.
They filled up in like 2 minutes. It was literally, it started, they opened the doors, and I mean, they obviously have everything open anyway, but I think they open at 4. And by the time they opened, they had filled the first lot. They had, I think, 3 overflow lots completely full.
Oh, this is at the Bass Pro.
Yeah, the one in
Yeah.
Bass Pro. And,
Well, I'll tell you, I've been to that event.
mhm.
Uh, I went in 2019. I actually brought my camper down with and my wife drove the vet while I towed the camper, and we stayed at campground like right around the corner.
Nice.
And I kind of said I'll go there at like, my wife said, when does it start? And she says, well, I said it starts at like 5, and I said, but I'm probably going to go there at like 3.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God I did.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, that is one of those events that even though it starts at 5, you better get there pretty early if you want to get a good spot and be able to see stuff like as it's coming in, kind of thing, or you're going to be walking a long way.
So from what you're seeing right now, are we at the end of the car show season, or is this just kind of like the big ones are cutting out and we're going to get some slack that's filling in holes?
I mean, I think you're going to see some of a lot of pop-up meets kind of happening. That's what we're going to start seeing. There's still a couple of like like a few and far between that are like happening, the later ones kind of thing. But
I see my Toys for Tots calendar filling up is what I see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's true. But I think that, like I said, I think the pop-up events where people are just going to say like, we can't wait till next year, so we just want to do something, kind of thing. And so that's one of those, you stay close to your Facebook, your Instagram to find out about those events, because they happen spur of the moment, and I can't keep track of those on my website.
Right.
It's just impossible.
Well, that's it. That's the thing, and that's what I see is from what you've taken on from your responsibility. It's because, and you would say, I don't want to do this nationally, or I don't want to do something. I'm amazed that you do it beyond, New Hampshire and Massachusetts, because there's so much stuff that can get lost in this whole thing. That
it really is, and there's actually, like, I kind of took my cue from a guy who's an older gentleman, who does it and still has kind of like a page, and he and I have spoken via email a couple of times, and he usually gives me a hard time because like he'll always find the one event that I have that's inaccurate. It's like, he'll go onto my website and he'll like find that, well, no, this one's canceled now. And it's like, well, listen, if they don't tell me that it's canceled, I don't really know. And that's the thing, is like a lot, I would say close to 80% of the car shows that I have on my website, they don't even know I have them on my website.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. They because I'm scouring the web, I'm like checking multiple sources, kind of thing. And even subscribing, like, to their Facebook page, and and I'll get like, the update that they've scheduled a show, but then getting and wading through like all of the different like updates on whether or not it's like canceled, or that kind of thing. It's so hard to wade through, throughout the year, especially as like you get busier in the year. like pre-COVID, I think I had like over 490 confirmed shows in February.
Yeah.
Right. And then March happened, and like it to keep up with the cancellations at that point just became like impossible. I literally took the calendar down. It just and then just went to like only a list only kind of thing, and with huge disclaim. And I still have disclaimers, just due to everything, just check their main website, because I always have links to the main website if I can, if I have it, kind of thing, to check for the latest information on.
Well, one of the things that we do, because we do the car show resolutions that you'd have for the end of the year, and one of the things we always say is have your next year planned out ahead of time, because there's certain events that are going to happen, and certain events that you can kind of go, hey, you did this last year, can you plan on doing it again? And getting people in the habit of putting the stuff down so you can kind of plan your year out. And this last 2 years, it's been super difficult to get that done.
Darn near impossible, because I mean, on a spur of the moment, I went to the York Auto Show up in Maine, because that was canceled the year before, and but they did it this year, and that was a fantastic show. But you're absolutely right. Like actually being able to keep track of like year to year, especially the last 2 years, and I think we're probably going to go through another year of that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then I'm hoping like the 2024 season is going to be a little bit more predictable.
Well, it's funny because we see a lot of this stuff being there's still this battle, and it's going to be, I don't want to say left and right because people will take that wrong, but it's, I want to say it's still, there's a battle that's going on between people who say, I want one thing and I want the other. And it has nothing to do with people that where they've gotten, punched or not. It really has to do with, it's a fear thing. And I think that's one of the big reasons that a lot of people are not running back to working in shops and working at dealerships and doing all stuff, because it's very, we run businesses that are very human intensive. And that thing is some people are not running back, some for bad reasons, some for really good reasons. So people
I think like if you wanted to like kind of like lay that in terms of like the trucking industry.
Yeah.
Like, so the trucking industry, like their biggest problem that they faced is that the majority of the older guys who are like the most prone,
right?
They started not, they basically said, I'm retiring now.
Yep.
And of course, the biggest problem with the trucking industry right now is that I don't remember when it happened, but at some point they made the mandate that if you're 18 years old, you can't go across state lines. So if you're an 18-year-old truck driver, you can't go across state lines. Oh yeah, it's a true thing. And that's why the trucking industry is having a really hard time. But they have like a lot of 18 to 21. They can't cross state lines until they're 21. And that's
I'm like, where?
Yeah. I mean, I'm that guy like that, and like it or hate it, I'm that guy that actually says, well, if they can die for our country and they can, and they can, why can't they tow a load across state lines? That just seems silly to me, kind of thing. But it is what it is, and I think that's part of the problems that we've been facing with, all these ships that are like and all these problems we're having with getting product and that kind of thing. So
when it comes to
supply chain,
any kind of stuff that has to do with the industries that we're involved in, it just seems like, so we have this microchip thing that's a shortage. That was really, some of them will say, I'm going to call it bad planning, even though it effectively isn't in some cases.
Well, I mean, it's funny because like in my job, where I work for, in the defense industry, there was a lot of pre-planning on our part, or at least an attempt, where we started ordering product because we knew it was coming. Like everybody, they like flat out told us, plan on it. Type of thing. So we tried to do it, kind of thing, but I don't think anybody realized it was going to be as substantive as it was.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I should say. Or it was going to be temporary. And it's what's amazing to me is like each and like how many industries are being affected by it. Like the one that surprised the hell out of me was I was just talking to a gentleman today who ordered a boat, and he's not going to see it until probably 2024.
Jeez.
Right?
I like, you can order a Lamborghini and you're going to see it 4 to 6 months. Remember remember, so think about it this way. You just ordered your last Lamborghini Ultimate. They're not taking orders anymore for Lamborghini.
Right.
And that's going to be, that car, you're going to probably get it before the end of, I don't know, maybe December, maybe sometime into January.
Well, I mean, it's a subjective kind of comparison,
right?
Don't you think? Because like it's kind of like Ferrari and Lamborghini are pretty much like the majority of the stuff is handmade, right?
Right.
For the most part, kind of thing. So, realistically, all they need to get is metal, fiberglass,
carbon fiber,
and carbon fiber, right? I mean, those are like your 3 ingredients that you have to have, and epoxy, or so we'll call it 4.
We'll call it resin.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So you get a load of resin came in, some foam blocks, and you're gold.
You're gold, right? and they can build a car, kind of thing. Whereas, but I'm sure they're seeing like the same kind of like issues, especially like in the chip.
I think the biggest difference that you see in the big brands is obviously with Ferrari and Lamborghini. Lamborghini will sell. What was it? I think they sold 12,000 Aventador, something like that, over the entire time that it's been the 10 years. And now it's like, if Chevy will sell that many, and 20,000 Corvettes in a year, I mean, it's a totally different monster. So, and then it comes into Ford trucks. It's no doubt why, you see the supply chain drying up,
Have you seen that? There's actually the International Space Station actually took a picture of the Ford parking lot from space, and literally you can see all of the Ford F-150s waiting for their ECMs because of the supply chain issue with
the word horrifying comes to mind for that,
right? And so then you're thinking to yourself, geez, I don't know that I want to order a Ford F-150, because how long is it going to be sitting out in open air, right? Or, or
with 80 pounds of pressure in the tires, and
right, and direct sunlight, and like on the same spot of the interior. So it's like how it's going to be custom faded,
right.
You get it.
Well, before we next, did you see this new chair that I got here? Did you see this bad boy?
Look at that bad boy! Like, how come you're not strapped in? I mean, it's already got the holes for you, so you can like strap yourself in. And
right. So this is the new Dowinx, the Dowinx chair that we saw, and I said, you know what? It looks a lot like the Lamborghini chairs that I've driven in the past, and I purchased one. I really like it. I'm going to be putting the link if you guys want a chair just like this one, look as cool as we do.
Nice.
I don't know if you can. It's going to be difficult, but at least you can start with the chair.
Right.
But we're going to be putting a link so that if you guys are interested in purchasing one yourself, you can do it there. I don't know if we'll for the people that are listening to it on the podcast side of it, we might have a link. I'm going to see how I do that. I might have to link it back to maybe the YouTube link to make sure, because there's a couple of rules they have about how we share their links out so they can get their own. But yeah, that's the thing is this thing is really cool, and it's really, I'm going to show while you guys, I'm going to put a hold on our part of it real quick. I'm going to see if I can put a video right here, and they guys can check it out, and then you and I will be right back. It looks really easy.
All right, so that's it. The Dowinx chair is a gaming chair, but it looks, I love the little diamond stitching that we have on it. Diamond stitching chair, very comfortable. Does have a very good feel of that Lamborghini race seat. Has the racy here. Does have a headrest, so I can put behind it and kind of support it. But I don't know, maybe me, I'm used to sitting in so many Murcielagos and Diablos that I'm kind of used to this kind of hard-edged back. It does adjust, so it has like a tilting option to it, and also has a reclining option, so you can recline the back or tilt the whole body of the chair back. So I was really happy that the armrests will go up and down. It really seems like it's made for kind of a bigger person though, so that's why I have it completely up, and I have them real tight on my sides, so they look really good. And obviously we can put on the big old cans like so and be ready for a great show coming up, and I'm really excited. So I hope you guys are excited too. Check out the link for this. We'll have a link in the description as well as on our shop page, so you guys can pick up a chair just like this for yourselves. Love the brown, but it does come in a black with red. We might end up getting a black with red stitching too to go with it, because that's kind of my favorite interior when it comes to both Ferraris and Lamborghinis. So no, who knows? We'll see what happens and things.
Okay, so I hope they like that chair. But anyway, so you guys pick up your own, and magic will happen. Just look at all the great things we do on these shows, huh?
Right.
So, one thing that we were talking about before, because we did the last thing was supply lines, right? And supply chains. So we got the new Range Rover that's coming out 26. We've got the Lamborghini Aventador that's going out. We have some microchips for you truck guys out there that are sucking it up.
Yep.
And then hopefully you guys from the 18-year-olds can actually get some licenses to drive. Right. Is there anything else in the news that really has? I don't think we've missed anything, right?
No.
That was very, very enlightening.
And that was my insight for the for that.
So I'm going to pose a challenge to you right now. I think it was going this part 2 of the segment here is people sending me messages with smiley faces, so I guess they know what we're doing. So the second section of it, one thing that we ran into a couple of days ago was that there are kind of cars out there that kind of really, because one thing we've kind of pushed ourselves to, if I can walk around this bush enough today, was luxury, exotic, luxury, new. Is whenever I say luxury, people think Mercedes, they think Audi, they think BMW, but I don't think a lot of people think about stuff like the Cadillacs. Cadillac has gone more performance wise, and I think a lot of the Cadillac guys still kind of fall into that. They want to fight that domestic battle.
Yeah, and it is. And I think that's like a shift that probably happened. I actually say that that shift started happening when the North Star V8 first came out.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It was a CTSV time. That was that.
Yeah, CTSV, and then there actually I think it was the Cadillac STS was actually I think the.
Oh yeah, no,
like the real one that that I kind of like really wanted. My wife will never allow me to get a Cadillac because she claims it's an old man car.
Well, they do that to Bentley, and I argue about it all the time because it's not. Right. But anyway, we did an event a couple, I don't know. See, it's going to bug me now. Like 3-4 months ago, it was basically like an invite only event. We did let the invites only, but you had to register for the event to make sure the cars that we were getting were very selective. And it wasn't just because we were being pompous about it. It was because
it was a curated event.
It was exactly. It was curated because, well, then the thing is it wasn't something that we just ran. There was a group of people that were basically judging what showed up. Yeah. We had to be very careful about it because some stuff had happened in the past and people had complained about we kind of let the doors open the first time, and what ended up happening is these cars showed up and kind of ruined it for everybody by parking in people's businesses' driveways and stuff.
Yeah.
And the businesses complained. So we jokingly said, I said, well, look, let's do what we do best, which is do these exotic things. And I said, they're not going to complain when they have a Lambo sitting out front because it just drives business to them. And sure enough, funny enough, it worked. Right. So as I was getting the information back, we were talking about these kind of cars that fall into these different categories, and the guy looked over and he says, well, I didn't come to the event. I didn't even or supply my info for it. And I said, really, why? And he goes, well, Cadillacs really don't fit into that genre of luxury. And I'm like, huh? Like, here
Yeah.
you have a car that's like, I don't know what the power, I think you made 535 horsepower on this thing. It's a luxury oriented car. You know, it's got the wheels, it's got the exhaust, it's got some stuff to it. But those comment was made that we thought we were too good for him. And I'm like, when did that happen? When did that separation happen that these cars don't fit?
So isn't it true though, for like a little while, you know, there was that time period when even a Corvette wasn't considered like an exotic car show worthy type of thing. Whereas I think nowadays, like one could argue that the Corvette is the American exotic just as much as a Viper.
And I think so. People
I think the
argue,
Viper is more. I think the Viper is more of an exotic than a Corvette. But as far as like a Cadillac,
this is go. You finish your thing there, but I got to get back to that Corvette thing because you opened a can of worms. That
I literally think that I almost want to agree with the gentleman that said that his Cadillac might not fit in with a Lamborghini, might not fit in with a Ferrari. I mean, if you had a lot of Mercedes like sitting around and maybe a lot of Audis, you know, that type of thing. I mean, but there's the thing, like, where do you draw the line with Audi? Do you only say like an Audi R8 is like worthy of as an exotic? Is an Acura NSX an exotic?
That's where I let the mid-engine concept, and that's people argue with me. I don't have a problem with the NSX line, but the problem is this kind of happens at the MR2 line because the MR2 is mid-engine, but it's only 220 horsepower. It has the 3S GTE engine in it, and that's where it's kind of like.
Let's look at that. I mean, there's a can of worms for you. Like, let's look at that. Like, why does it have to have so much horsepower?
Right.
Like,
well, at the time, 300 horsepower was the number.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we still go back to something like a Lotus. Like if you get the Lotus Elises today, when Lotus started making the Elise and they made the Exige and those cars, the first starting power that they had was 180 horsepower. They used the old Celica GTS motor, that Yamaha motor. So they did make a lot of power, but they were directed at being rare and they tried to be fast.
Well, I think, what was the Jeremy Clarkson line about the aerial atom? And it was like, that's like pure horsepower per metric ton. Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's where you kind of have to like wonder, because maybe it only makes like 180 horsepower, but the thing only weighs what? Like 1,900 pounds.
Right.
Right. So the thing like, moves like all get out because it doesn't have any weight to push, kind of thing. And it has like an amount of torque that's going along with it, type of thing. So,
well, here's a good one for you. Let me put this in here ready. I love that, but we're just throwing, this is two devil's advocates arguing it out. So, and it's like, neither of them are, you're like, wow, they're not wrong. But that like the factory 5818 is 818 kilograms. Here's a car with 300 horsepower, so it's going to fall into those old things. It's I don't know if I think it's mid-engined or whatever. It doesn't matter. Here's a car that really, I mean, it literally is a street race car. They say there's a street version with it has nice interior and stuff in it. I don't know. I've sat in one. I really think this car is made to kill people, just like any of the that's what made the Diablos great. Oh, where'd you go? You went gray.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, there it goes.
Oh, there it goes. It's back. But so there's an example. Here's a car that you go, is that a tuner car? It uses a Subaru engine, but it's not a Subaru. It's not and people would kind of lump it into the kit car area. But when it came to doing a show and I said, oh, it's exotic luxury, somebody brought up an 818. I'm letting it in.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, that's also kind of like a rare car because it's a kit car, so you could argue on that one. But let's go back to your what can of worms did I open with the Corvette?
Okay, so here's my thing. So, and it's funny. It goes back to my gaming days because I knew people that worked in Rockstar. I knew people that worked in different gaming conventions, and one time they would do that. So when the Mercedes came up, Dub Edition was for Midnight Club was Dub, so the Dub company was involved, and suddenly they were now licensed products. So they had to be a lot more careful about how they kind of pitched cars and made them look a certain way. So when it came to the luxury, the Dub was, by the way, one of the coolest companies for them to ever hear about working with. I ended up doing a ton of shows with them after they ended up making the game, and we got some people, shared some names and stuff, and we ended up doing a ton of shows with those guys that just showing up and basically covering their events, and it was a lot of fun. They were really good people. I wish they'd still do stuff today because they fall in that certain niche. But what that was the thing is they're building this game, and they said we got to be really careful because certain cars fall in certain niches. The Viper ended up being that domestic muscle car, which I thought was really funny. Then they did, the Mercedes. All the Mercedes were luxury, even if it went into the, SLs and like CLK 63 Black is not exotic. Okay, I won't argue with it, but it really is the nomenclature. I think it should have been supercar versus whatever. But they got to the Corvettes, and here's an issue. So is the Corvette a tuner? Because it gets a lot of tuner work. So you could do an engine, you could do the exhaust, you could do all the work to it. You could make a car that started off with 300 horsepower and end with thousands of horsepower. And that's the perfect example would be one of the fastest cars in the world. I think Lingenfelter Callaway. Yeah. Callaway Sledgehammer 1988 Corvette. I mean, doesn't get any tuner than that if you've held the speed record for like forever. Right. But the other thing is they said, well, it is domestic, so it would be a muscle car, but so do certain years make it a muscle car, or can the Viper be a muscle car? Now, then they said, well, how many do they make a year? And we said 20,000. And they said, oh, well, does that make it exotic too? Do we make it multi-platform, or we just kind of cinch it into a spot? And they ended up making it a muscle car because of this is the problem with being domestic cars is you end up being I'm domestic. And so there I'm a muscle car because muscles kind of fall into that area of being able to be tuned, upgraded in drag cars basically.
Yeah, but it's funny as the owner of a C4 Corvette, I actually don't have a problem being lumped in with the muscle car nomenclature. Right. I would certainly never say that my C4 Corvette is an exotic car by any means. But I would certainly say that it has a certain amount of respect level that it doesn't get, kind of thing, based on the technology that came out of that platform at that time. Right. Kind of thing. Like every safety feature that we now take for granted was, came out as standard on a C4 Corvette platform, like as it matured. Like anti-lock braking was like the first to become like standard on even a base model Corvette. Right. Type of thing. And traction control and that type of thing. So the C4 has always been, like I always call it, it's the bastard stepchild of the Corvette. Whenever I've gone to a Corvette show, it's like you can see like all the old guys going, oh, there's the wedge of cheese pulling in.
Right. A wedge of cheese. That's awesome. Right. And the worst part is you can't get it out of your head once you see it. It's like,
it can't be unseen, right? And
while you're talking, I'm going to be on my phone looking for C4 vets.
Yeah. and what's funny is that I don't think, going back to your original thing about like Cadillacs and what defines an exotic, it's kind of funny because my definition of an exotic has always been that it's usually Ferrari, Lamborghini. I actually did consider Lotus, in that realm. definitely like the old Panteras. That was the car that I lusted after as a child. Um, you know, and maybe a Jaguar.
You know what? I'm gonna because I want. There's a tangent I'm gonna go off on a little bit after this.
But see where I'm going.
Yeah.
My perception is that an exotic is not a domestic car.
Yeah, but here's my question. This is where it comes, because you're gonna say that, but then this question is gonna hit you, and you go, me and you right now are there. We're gonna put together an exotic car show. It's gonna be exotic luxury. Obviously, we're going to have some other cool cars in there. So I think like Fisker Karma showed up to the event. So that was really cool.
Yep.
So somebody would say, well, is it exotic? I'm like, it's a Fisker Karma. It's exotic. I don't care.
Right.
So all of a sudden, Joel Chappell, see, I noticed I got the name right.
Yeah.
Comes in with his Corvette and he wants to be in the event. And you are the one that has to decide whether he is going to be coming in or not. What do you think?
So here's why I think it should be allowed in.
Ooh, okay.
If you say nothing else about the Corvette, the reason the Corvette was made domestically was because of the exotic car that was the English
Right.
sports cars that the soldiers started, buying up when at the end of their tenure and cleaning up like from World War II and that kind of thing, and they started shipping them back, and so then you saw like a whole bunch of MGBs. And,
I'm sorry,
but yeah, right. I mean, listen, like I have a very good friend who has a 71 MG, and we always make the joke, as long as it's not raining, it's fine.
Right? Yeah.
Kind of thing, but you always have your can of WD-30 with your WD-40 with you, right? To make sure that you can spray it.
That's awesome,
right? but that's the thing. It's the Corvette literally is a thing because of the Ferraris and that's what we want. We wanted our own version of it. So if nothing else, a Corvette is inspired by the exotics, of mostly probably the English persuasion, but certainly a lot of the Italian persuasion.
Right. Well, the thing is if you're wondering, yes, there was a vet that was just like yours, and it did he didn't make it to the event, but he did get a big old check mark, and he could bring it in.
He got the check mark.
Right. But the thing is, and this is what I was saying about going back off on the tangent here about, because you got to remember too, I didn't come from 2000. This is where things get weird for a lot of people that look back and don't understand what they're talking about or weren't around long enough to argue. When we were doing events in the late 80s, early 90s, mine was more around I would say I got my traction in 89. Really got some running room back. I ended up going back south in 91. And then when I came back, I still had a little bit of momentum in the community. So I kind of, dug in as deep as I could. So when we had events, you have to remember the number was 300 horsepower. So if you had, when we were talking about Ferraris, so it was was it 328? I think was just it was still in that, by the way, people were not fans of that car. Right. We all still loved our Testarossas. We all still loved our Countachs. When you did events like that, the biggest cars that you saw were like Porsches. So the 911 was still a very traction oriented vehicle. So if you think about it, the only brands that we had out there were really Lamborghini, which 1, 2 showed up maybe top. So Lambo, Ferrari, you get a couple of those. Then you get your Porsche guys, and all the Porsche guys they were religious about their Porsches.
Yeah.
So those are the big three.
It is a religion,
right? It is. Oh no, I am not only I'm an owner, but I understand what cult I'm in, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I've come to terms with it, and if anybody wants to try to rescue me, it won't work. But
it's not like you're in Scientology for crying out loud.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, well, it's probably Scientology would probably be cheaper, but
right.
But so that was the thing but those are the three brands. So when people said, what was your line? Corvette was not the line. Like Corvettes were totally okay if you had, whatever the big Dodge was at the time.
I have to ask the question. I have to ask the question: did you draw the line on anything like pre 1985?
No.
Because
Mm-mm.
every Ferrari, there were a lot of Ferraris that
Right.
were below the 300 horsepower. Just
Well, that
so
was the only
be
saving
awarded.
grace that they had, was that Lamborghini didn't make a lot of cars. So it ended up being Ferrari would kind of take up the slack. But there's, especially in New England, in Virginia, when I was down there, you didn't have this stuff. You had to go to DC or you had to be in the Maryland area to be
Yeah,
involved in any of it. That stuff, yeah, those collectors had stuff up there. But when he came up here, it really permeated more than people understood. People were collectors.
yeah,
So yeah, so it was a different kind of mindset. The funny thing is nobody in America was big per se on BMW. Like, we hardly ever saw BMW. You hardly ever saw Mercedes. A lot of that import stuff had been locked down in '87, so the well was kind of dry. Like, I didn't
yeah.
see a lot of that stuff, and if I
Well,
did, I didn't pay attention to it.
it's funny because what I used to say, in like especially whenever I was trying to defend the C4, is a lot of people used to like go, they always go to like the first year of the C4 because there was no 83. If you remember, there was no Corvette in
I
19.
always mess that up.
Although actually technically there were actually technically 4 of them made.
Yeah.
That being said, they had the Crossfire motor.
Oh my God. I
Right?
haven't heard, yeah, I didn't make that statement until we did the last Callaway video, and we actually referenced it, and it's still funny.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and my buddies always talk about that particular motor. But that being said, that motor at the time, I think it put a whopping 220 horsepower.
Oh, it was embarrassing.
Right. Was it an embarrassment though? Because it was still technically number 7 on the fastest car in the world.
Yeah, right. But I had an
But
80. I had an 83 Trans Am, and it was just I to this day I cry because
right. Right.
I like didn't know what I missed. You know what I mean?
Right. But you have to remember, you just hit the nail on the head. Even your Trans Am had like what, 190 horsepower?
Oh yeah, maybe.
Right. But every car was like that. It wasn't just the Corvette. It wasn't just the Trans Am. Like every car, like I think you ready for this? I learned how to drive on a 1985 Renault Encore.
That's actually impressive.
And I think that thing might have had 92 horsepower.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm having problems going uphill. Like, can you imagine? Yeah. Like, the DeLorean guys are like that. We have an exotic car. I'm like, your car has like 80 horsepower.
Right.
Like,
right.
I mean, it's still exotic, but it's 80 horsepower.
What's funny though is like there was 2 versions of the DMC DeLorean where like one of them was the V6 and then the other one was the 4-cylinder.
Yeah, I am not a DeLorean guy for any. I mean, like, I got friends that are restoring them. I want to drive one for one of my shows. Don't know anything about them, and that's how you find out. You really go out there and experience it, and you go, okay, well, they said some stuff, but I went out there and did it. So in my trick, and I have to say it, if I get a DeLorean, I'm going to 88 miles per hour and see what happens.
You have to, but it'll take you a while. But you'll not as long a while if you got the V6, but if you got that 4-cylinder, it's going to take a while.
So the other thing, let's get by that. Remember, I was going to that 91 thing. One of the problems that happened was when I'm going to say 91. It happened around the 89 time frame, but I don't think any people got really into it until 91. But soon 91 hits, and now you have the Mitsubishi Eclipse. You have what's
3000 and then the 3000 GT.
Yeah, you have the Diamond Star stuff. So 3000 GT, 300 ZX. People forget these cars because they're all wrapped up in that Fast and Furious Supra. The 300 ZX was a car that literally couldn't be beaten on the track. Yeah. If you went to Super GT and you ran an accurate NSX, you were going to win. Yeah. They made rules to try to defeat the car, and they couldn't.
Well, that's why the Corvette was actually thrown out, and they had to make their own. Right. They had to make their own racing league, and class.
Well, the 91, what is it, ZR1? So now that's come out. So now you have this thing so I'm going to have an exotic event, and you have to remember that not everybody rolled 300ZXs. Nobody rolled these things. And then you hit that, I want to say it's the 94, 95 zone. And now we have the Ferrari 355, which is making what, 350 horsepower. The Diablo, you have, so the Diablos were actually making cars. We were actually seeing them. They were out there rolling around. It wasn't like, 1,000 of them in existence kind of thing.
So playing devil's advocate, do you actually call it an exotic car show, or do you call it a sports car show?
See, and that's where I say this is where the confusion happens, because as we moved into the 2000s, we were 94. So let's do the measurement by the McLaren F1, which held 246 miles per hour was the record it held for I don't know how long. Yeah, it held like 10, 11 years before finally the 9FF, I think it was, that came out and beat it by like 2 miles per hour. And then it got beat like a week later.
Yeah, there was a time frame where it was like everything was just like leapfrogging each,
exactly.
Like we didn't beat it for like a long time, and then suddenly like we're seeing like the 900 plus horsepower exotic coming out kind of thing. But
well, then I see a post the other day that said, okay, it's 2021. I think that we come to the realization that 300 horsepower is no longer fast.
I disagree.
And I'm going to disagree too. Because
I think 300 horsepower in a you put 300 horsepower in a Honda Civic, and let me tell you, that thing's gonna boom. Right.
Well, not just that. Like, if you make, the idea that a Honda, I don't think it's about horsepower anymore, because it's become so out there, and that's where I think the wheels came off the logistics car, and I think that's where we're getting the debates about Corvette's not.
I think it's horsepower per ton.
Yeah, but still, it still comes back to the idea of somebody's going to argue and say, "Oh, that Z06 no longer hits the level that it needs to make the supercar number 505 horsepower." Let's be honest, Joel, it's not that powerful. And I'm like, are you stupid? Like, what's
Get
wrong?
Out of your freaking mind.
Yeah, are you the same dude that was like, I honed my cylinders and that's why I got all that 20 horsepower out of it?
And I hate like always constantly being that Corvette guy that brings up the Corvette, but like I've had arguments with guys, where they're like, one particular gentleman that I work with, he's always talking about like the fact, he's like, he had to get his Grand Sport, and right. Mm-hmm. Or it has to be and then there's the other guy that it's like, it's got to be a Z06. And I'm like, why? I was very close to actually possibly trading in my C4 for the last of the C7s, because McMulkin, who's the number 2 Corvette dealership in the country, they were at like in November of 2019, they were selling base model Stingrays for $39,000.
Wow.
And I was like, and my wife was like, we're not getting a car loan for a summer car. And
I get where you're coming from with that. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, damn it, but that being said, I kind of do the, like, you're still getting a close to, I think it was 400 horsepower at that point, and like even a base model Corvette still puts out some moves and can certainly get out of a lot of things way. But I definitely think, anybody who says that like 300 horsepower isn't that much,
right?
I think it varies per car. Like, okay, 300 horsepower in a 4-door, Escalade,
right?
It isn't that much, because you're pushing 7,000 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, whereas if you, you throw like 500 horsepower into that, that's still not that much, for that particular thing. And of course, it's not geared right either. Right. It's not going to be like, it's not going to do like a 3-second 0 to 60 just because it's got 500 horsepower. Right. So I think it's subjective. I don't think that's a gauge that you can use. And that kind of goes back to my argument of saying, do we call it an exotic or do we call it a sports car?
Well, here's And now we're going to go back. Get ready. I'm getting some more wrenches for your works because we're coming in the last like couple of minutes here for the show. So I want to make sure I get all my wrenches in early. The monkey has jumped out of the bed.
I'm gonna start ducking, like, you know,
Right,
where
yeah.
like
You ever seen the movie Dodgeball when he's throwing the wrenches? That's
yes,
the thing. Yeah.
exactly, right.
But yeah, that's so now we come to not just the word power. Let's look at price point. So somebody said, okay,
I don't even think that. No.
Yeah, but that's the thing is if you look at it and you say, okay, well, you spent for a Countach right now, the Countach that sold for 140, let's say 147,000, 147,000 back in the 80s.
In
today,
$80 though.
In $80 is a value today around 300,000 to 330,000, right?
Right.
Somebody just sold a Datsun for 240,000 on, and that was what it was valued at.
A 240 ZX, right?
Yeah,
right. You know, for, and I think it was even at 2+2.
Yeah, right. And so not only that, but let's think about that first. So everybody says, you know, I love that joke about, you know, Chevy V8 because you know, nobody's going to do a barn find and be excited about finding an Integra. And one sold for $200,000 not long ago.
You know, I think every car has an audience.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, if nobody's, I'll put it to you this way: if nobody was going to get excited about, like, let's even do the Prius.
I'm sorry.
You know, that's the biggest meme that's always floating around. Nobody's going to get excited about like a Prius. Although, really, I mean, because how many people get excited about seeing like a 1979 Mark 1 Rabbit? Right. I kind of like go gushy inside kind of thing because it's kind of like a little bit of that youth kind of thing. So I think like,
well, your old Volvo is never going to get a lot of excitement.
Unless it's the turbo.
They wouldn't know what they were looking at. I'm just gonna say, you know.
Well, okay, and that's when we had that talk about the generational aspect.
Right. Yeah.
I think, right. You know, so somebody of our generation is going to get excited about a Volvo 240 turbo intercooled station wagon.
Right.
You know, and even Jeremy Clarkson gets excited about that. You know. But you know, it's the same thing. Like people get excited about a Mini.
Yeah. Well,
right.
Well, I mean, people get excited about Teslas.
Right. And I'm like, okay, that's if that's your thing, kind of thing. I think there will be people that will be excited to see. But I'm never calling a Tesla.
I don't care what anybody says. I'm not calling a Tesla a supercar. I'll call it a luxury car, which is what I think it is. But I'm not calling it a supercar. There's going to be versions that they saw one, I think, in Audi that was, I mean, the thing looked like it was straight out of Car Wars. And I said, I would buy that car. I don't care if it was electric, and I would embrace our new masters wholly. But
is there, in your opinion, a current electric supercar?
No.
Not even the BMW?
No. Well, you drive one.
Really?
So, yeah, and the thing is so somebody would ask me, is the Acura NSX, the new one, is that a supercar? And I go, and funny enough, it is more of a supercar than people would realize it is. Like, that's really kind of the bar that everybody should reach for. I don't know if NSX actually mastered the bar. I don't think I'm sure there's some people that argue about that, and I think they have an excellent argument. I would say bang for a buck. Remember, so there was the time that you said, hey, if I bought any car, if you're going to buy a car back in from 2009 plus or something, it was, if you're looking to get the best car bang for the buck, it was getting a Corvette Z06 to Z01 or a Nissan GTR. That's, you're going to, if you can save money and you're going to outrun pretty much anybody on the street unless they have something insane.
Yeah.
So the thing was, is somebody look at me and say, okay, I want to beat those cars. The Lexus LFA never did it. With the Acura NSX, I tend to wonder if put at least that technology to the application that it needs to be, and the Acura gets the tech right. Yeah. Then you have a car that's at that next level that takes all those other cars, rolls them up in a little ball and tosses it behind it and go, eat my dust. And Yeah, it really will do it. But then you have stuff like the what is it, the Porsche 718 or the, you know, what the Porsche Cayman Logic, which is the mid-engine Porsche, which doesn't take into account some of this electrical technology. And that's the thing is these companies aren't jumping on, they're getting into the rut of EV and leaving the real tech behind. And that's where I was like, I don't feel that there's any, I think there's some cool cars out there that are electrical, but I don't think that any of them get it right. And that's the thing is I'm not saying they never will. I'm just saying that right now,
it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, the tech is not where it needs to be to say these guys are into that zone. Are they? Yeah, you get in a Tesla, it feels really quick 0 to 60, but I've gotten in Volkswagen Golfs that somebody looks over and goes, wow, that thing really takes off. That's not a litmus test. I need numbers. And when you look over and you say, oh, that car makes 1,000 horsepower because I added up all the electric engines in it, that's not how this works.
Right. Yeah. So, I agree with you 100% on that. And I think, you know, I think like you probably know more than I do based on the sheer volume of different cars that you've driven versus what I've driven. And I've driven a lot. But you know, driving like a Honda Prelude, you know, back in the day versus, you know, driving a Lotus Elise, you know, like
good one. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like the, you know, apples to apples, you know, for horsepower ratios, not quite even, but not necessarily that far off. But let me tell you, they do drive drastically different, and the handling aspect and what I always like to call that seat of the pants feel.
And I got a better example, and you're gonna love it. You ready? I don't know if you've ever driven one, but if you have, you should. Take a Lotus Elise, and I did this. I actually had them both on the lot at the same time. I had a 7th gen Toyota Celica GTS, so it has the independent everything suspension.
Yep.
So it has the 180 horsepower. It has the same engine out of the Elise, and that was, but obviously the weight's different because it has all the stuff that, you know, a street car like that would have. It don't drive the automatic because it's not the same, but the 6-speed, which was really nice. So heavy 6-speed handler that we're golden, and then compare that to the driving experience that you get from the Elise.
Yeah.
And then tell me what, I mean, because the Celica really tried to be the heavier Elise in this equation, but it's front wheel drive. It's not, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that dynamic position that happened with those is really what I'm talking about, that where somebody look over and say, I love that Celica. And I am a smitten for a Celica. I want to do a race car version of it. I want to make one that's rear wheel drive. And I would make one that would be an exotic car when it was done. But that's the thing is I'm sorry, that Elise is just, it's a go-kart, and it's made to do what it does. But you still, like we were saying, those cars that say, well, we do this great 0 to 60 thing. And I go, where's your top end? Where's your, there's a lot more to this thing than throwing numbers at it. And I think people are going to really wake up when it comes to electric cars and realize those numbers didn't mean everything that they needed to. That's why cars like the RX-7 FD was one of the best handling cars in the world. The Cayman was one of the best handling cars in the world. The Porsche 944 was one of the best handling cars in the world. Now you have these, Audi R8, 100 less horsepower than most of the other cars around it in the V8 trim, 420 horsepower, beating up on cars that had 500, 550, close to 600 horsepower on the track. And it's not about the numbers. It's all about the dynamics to it and what you can do with that power. And that has a lot to do with weight. It has a lot to do with design.
Is really a thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, right. You know, and you know, geometry of suspension is really a thing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And
just picking a different kind of suspension setup. So for instance, when we had the Genesis out, when the Genesis first came out, they put a McPherson strut system in it. And I think it's funny because we were doing the research on beefing up for some reason the word's escaping me, but so basically the suspension bars in it that hold it in place. Man, that's
portion.
I hate, yeah, torsion bar. Thank you. So they had the two bars front and back, and I was like, wow, these things come pretty stiff from the factory from the
Right.
year that we had. And so there's not a big move up to it, but the way that suspension was set up, because it swings like a pendulum in the back and it is rear wheel drive.
Yep.
It's so funny to think you do dynamic work to that. And suddenly it's like, well, that would normally understeer a car. And now I'm pushing oversteering into the turns. What's going on? It's because it's pushing it and pushing the back end out, because the back end wants to be loose. And if you do the same thing to an RX-7, which is like an FD, you're not going to get that same kind of balance. I mean, say like with a Ferrari or something like that, you're going to get a totally different kind of suspension load up. But that's the thing is with those, you don't really need to do.
Well, that was the whole thing. Like anybody who started to drive, like when they got their brand new C7 and then they decided to get their brand new C8.
Right.
And because, it went from like rear engine to, mid engine to front end.
Imagine going for, and this is my thing, going to that first 2009, and then maybe 2010. So now we go the Z06 into the 2010, now has the traction control set up. It now has the independent suspension system in the back the way it needed to be. Still needed left a lot to desire when it came to the interior. But that's the thing is
that's always been the downfall though. Right.
So now you're driving this car and you're like, wow, man, this really will take on cars bigger than it will. And you really said, somebody was like, what was the difference? And I said, your rear suspension. That was it. That's the only thing they changed. And because it wasn't sitting flat all the time.
Yeah.
And when it got into the turns, it allowed it to be more dynamic and more responsive. And that changed everything.
Yeah. Independent suspension, it's an amazing thing when it's done right.
Right.
And that's the key. There's so many like cars that do have independent suspension, and it's just not done right.
Yeah.
Which I would argue that sometimes makes that seat of the pants feel and sometimes makes a car feel, I would probably use the word dangerous, and sometimes that's a cool thing while driving a car.
What I think somebody said. What are we missing on cars today? And I don't think you'll ever get that I'm feeling dangerous. I agree
with you 100%. I think the worst thing that we have done is like adaptive cruise control. I think unfortunately my daughter did it where our GMC Yukon actually has the adaptive cruise control on it, and I taught her how to use it, and then she went to a car that didn't have it and she forgot. Thank God.
Well, I'll break it to you like this. And this is probably the one that I shouldn't go off on the tangent on, but I've never felt at risk in an electric car.
Well, have you driven one?
Yeah, I drove the i3 for BMW when it first came out.
Yeah.
I drove the 1 Series when they were testing it to be an electric car. I've driven the i8. I drove.
Did you feel bored?
On which one?
Both. Any of them.
The i3 was painful. Like I've never had a car that I did just want to get out of the seat on. And I understand what they were going for, but the way you let off the gas and it loads up and tries to recharge the battery. It just seemed like none of the systems did what it wanted to do. In fact, when we drove the, was it the 4.2 or whatever the Mercedes version of the smart car or whatever.
Yeah.
When we drove those, that was actually like, I'm like, this thing is crazy cool. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but when you think about somebody, if you drove one, you would immediately say, why didn't we put a Hayabusa engine in this? So when somebody did that, I was like, that's natural progression. This needs to have the fastest engine possible because it's just crazy funny. And then they were like, oh yeah, this thing's got 5-star crash test rating. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
When I got in the i3, none of that was there. I didn't have any of that feeling. I didn't have any excitement. I felt very numb. I couldn't do it. But
too much safety.
Right. But that's the thing is the 1 Series electric wasn't that bad. I didn't mind that at all. Like it seemed like the right way to go. And like I said, let's put an example of saying like the SL65 Black. The biggest, the McLaren SLR. So we drove that car, the number one, and at the time we put it against a Porsche. What's the big one? the one that Paul Walker died in.
Oh, the 918.
No, it's not the 918. It was the it's not the Carrera. Is it Carrera?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, Carrera. There we go. If there's so many C names, I'll lose it.
Right.
So we did that, and somebody said we got done with the McLaren SLR, and I was just like, what's this car missing? And the funny thing was, the guy looked over and he goes, the number one complaint on this car. And I was like, what's that? And he goes, it doesn't feel fast. And I was like, you're right. It didn't. Yeah. It didn't feel like a car that could go 200. And it can. It could easily go with the right wheels and everything. It was a 200 mile per hour car. You knew it.
Right.
But when you drove it, you were just like, yeah, this doesn't feel like a car that it did. There was no risk in it. It just felt like it just, no matter how you drive it. Now, when you drove the Porsche, I felt like I took my life into my own hands. And the crazy thing is now I look back and I see how many people we've lost to this vehicle. People have died driving it. And I go, wow, okay, that's bad. So it really is kind of weighing yourself on that thing of going between the Porsche and the Viper, because the Viper was dangerous, but it didn't kill a lot of people, versus you crash in a Viper. I don't know why it is. Just everybody walks away. They're fine.
Well, I mean, it's just built like a tank. I mean,
yeah, it is a tank.
It's not a light car by any means.
Right.
So it's got a lot of subframe to it to kind of hold you together.
Right. So anyway, I want to keep going, but we have to close up for this. We're going for a long time here, and I want to keep these something for the next show, because I know you've got some more stuff to talk about. I know those guys out there have some more stuff they want to hear from us. Yeah. So I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in. Again, go over to @New England Auto Shows. I think that's your Facebook one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, web, Instagram, WEBNEAS is the other one.
Yep.
And yeah, go over to the website newenglandauto.shows.com. I did the right one with the S, right?
Yep.
Perfect.
That's correct.
So, and as always, we're going to be doing our stuff from here. Executive Automotive Society, IG, Executive Automotive Society. Basically anywhere that has something on it, that's our thing. We're on Facebook, all that. We're going to continue to bring you some more content. We're going to continue to bring guys like Joel back on, because we need more stuff from them guys. Hopefully, that's the thing is my guest for tonight actually canceled. So it literally at the 11th hour. So I want to thank Joel for taking time out of his schedule to do a late night show with me.
It is always a pleasure, because we do ramble.
Oh, I love it. And the thing is, it's always good conversation too. So so it never can go wrong. So you guys, I know you guys are loving, and I know you want more of it. We're going to keep bringing it to you more. We're going to actually be YouTube, Rumble, a lot of other places that we're going to be adding to the list here, and we're going to make sure that it gets out to you guys. So, Joel, do you have any finishing words for tonight?
Hey, go to a car show.
Exactly. Well, if there's any left. So, and if not, hey, me and you, we got to go to that VVs thing. It's in the plan. So,
we do.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you real soon. And as always, it's been a great show. We'll talk to you soon. You guys have a great night.